Welcome to the NerdLore podcast, where we talk stories, theory, and lore. I am one of your hosts, Skandle.
And I'm Shiny Shoes.
And I'm Crashstarling.
Today, we are going to be talking about crappy jobs.
And he makes a big commotion. He said, I said it's good. What are you, stupid?
And I believe Sean over here, Crashed over here, is going to start.
So just sit with me, pour yourself a nice piping hot cup of gossip here, because I'm brewing up a shitstorm that I'm just gonna unleash this. So I just got a new job in a new environment, and now I can talk about all the horrible things that I went through at my old job. And let me tell you, I've had jobs where I feel like I'm not accomplishing anything. I've had jobs where I feel like I'm being overworked and underpaid. I've never had a job quite like this where I would have nothing to do all day, and then I would get reprimanded for doing nothing all day. So to kind of break down what my job used to be, I used to be a glorified babysitter for children's Chromebooks for when they broke, and I would send them out, and I, call the children whenever they, came back repaired because we didn't have parts. And there's not, literally, that was it. That was my whole job, was keeping track of where everything was, which I am horrible at, by the way, and being like basically the children's IT consultant for their Chromebooks. And you would think to yourself, wow, that sounds really easy. And it is. The only things about like record keeping was that none of the actual way, there was no set way for me to keep records, right? Like they recommended that I'd use certain products to keep track of stuff, but I had to make essentially the spreadsheets, and I had to make the methods of keeping track of these things. And nobody told me that. So they also didn't tell me exactly all of the things that I had to keep track of, which I'm going to give some clarification on here. But I just want you to imagine, right? Imagine a job where your job is be an attendant and keep track of stuff. And you go, okay, well, how would you like me to keep track of this? And they go, oh, you have to figure it out.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Yeah. So what would you like me to keep track of? And I'm like, oh, we're going to change it every time, something comes up. Why? Yeah. So for the last 6 months of that job, I was going through an improvement plan where they would point out things that I was doing wrong and give me notes on how to improve, right?
Yeah.
So the notes that I would generally get was, your record keeping is lacking, you're too sarcastic, and people think you're being mean to them. Which, no.
Now, quick question, just is it because your previous, supervisor may have also talked to people that way, but had a different delivery, or
no? Okay, so he's referencing himself clearly. Me and Skandle used to work together at this job, and then he moved on to bigger and better things, and I was left at. They were going to put me at the school that we worked in the same school, but then they moved me to a new school where all of the things that I had learned were just, you couldn't do that anymore. I was no longer allowed to be my own version of casual. I couldn't be sarcastic to people because they would take offense to it. And it was like the strangest ways, right? Like I'm trying to think of like how to put this, right? Like I would go up to one of the secretaries who I knew when I was a student at this school. And she was like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't feel like working today, so I'm just killing time, right? Like, obviously a joke, but that would get reported to my supervisor, And then they bring it up in these meetings. They're like, so you feel like you don't feel like, why did you even show up to work if you don't feel like working? And I was like, did they mention how long I was in the office? Because it was 5 minutes and I was picking up a package. That's the kind of shit that they did. They would change everything. Like every month they'd be like, your record keeping's trash. And I'd be like, all right, I changed it to keep these records. And they were like, yeah, but we want you to keep track of this too. All right, I'll add that in. Just nonstop for 6 months. And then the last 2 weeks come, right? The last 2 weeks before my improvement plan is over. And I'm like, I think I have it. Like I've done everything they've asked. Everything they've pointed out to me, I have corrected or I've improved upon. And the director of our IT program calls me in for an emergency meeting, pressing that big red button, and she brings in HR. And the whole time HR is just laughing at me, like just straight up. And I don't understand why, because I'm getting like, I am upset and emotional and angry, and I don't know how to fix this because I've done everything they've asked, right? And the HR lady, and I'm like telling them, I understand you are now at this point where you're going to fire me. I understand that. So I'm going to do everything I can. No. I tell my supervisor that I'm going to do everything I can in the next 2 weeks to prove that I can do this job fully. Mm-hmm. And I shit you not, this HR lady is like, good for you. Good. That's the right attitude. And I'm like, I don't even know your name.
Now, was she being sarcastic, or was she honestly trying to like?
No,
maybe she wasn't. I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't there.
What person who works like in a direct like social environment to like read people's moods sees someone who's extremely upset and emotional because they're going to get fired if they don't improve and does that? Like that was verbatim. There was not paraphrasing there. That's exactly what she said to me. And I don't have a good memory, but that stuck into my brain like it was just stuck in there like a knife. And I was like, because I looked at her like, did you really just like say that? But so over those 2 weeks, right? I wrote down everything they had ever asked me to keep track of, even the nonsense. I completed a bunch of side projects without asking anybody that would help improve the flow for either me or whoever ended up replacing me because I was fed up with this job. And I made a master list. I converted all of my previous lists into this master list. Like I did everything. Everything, right? So I asked my director, my supervisor, like I got a new job. Like that was a Friday. I got that 2 weeks notice. I applied for new jobs that weekend and I got an interview Monday and I left because I was like, I'm good. I'm not dealing with this anymore. So it's been a couple of weeks since then. And I reached out to my director because, we're still on pretty good terms. I've never thought she's been malicious to me at any point. And she has told me that the position that I had been asking for the last 2 years has now become available because they are reorganizing the department. And I've been passed up for 3 lateral moves that I really wanted. And as soon as I left, they post the job that I had been asking for. Never in my life have I had a business or a company like look me in my metaphorical eye and say "fuck you" in particular, bud.
Your brown
You're
eye,
a piece of shit. Every eye. They looked at every eye and said "fuck you" in particular.
Fifth eye, his emotion eye.
Right?
I get it.
My soul.
I'm kind of torn with the HR person. Like one time I was a part of someone getting terminated and the individual started crying and the lady that was doing the termination, she just looks at the girl and she's like, why are you crying?
That would have been my response. I don't do crying very well.
I don't do it well either, but I was just like, oh, hold on, let's pump the brakes here. They're emotional, so I had to explain, hey, maybe they're a little emotional. Let's take a couple seconds to let them gain their composure back. So yeah, it's kind of.
So,
I get
it. I'm still really, really good friends with people from that place. I didn't have that kind of experience with that department, and I'm sorry, and it sucks that you did. And
But like,
I don't know, man. Like, part of that's probably on me for not teaching you a little bit more,
but it wasn't your job to teach me that part.
Okay. I mean,
You know
I get it. I do. And if that's the way, if that's what you experienced that last 6 months that I was gone, that sucks, dude. That really does. And it's, I'm sorry that you had to do that, because I thought that department was like cool, like, because I didn't have that experience. So I'm sorry that, and I'm sorry that I brought you into it, man. Like that sucks.
Oh no, I like the department. It was my supervisor who I believe gave me all this trouble because she doesn't like me. But
now, you're talking about supervisor, not head, right?
No,
like,
never had a problem with that.
Okay, sorry.
I'm talking about the person. They moved my supervisor, who, to be fair, like I said, I worked with Skandle in this school, and he was not my. He was like my almost. He was just my superior, but he wasn't my supervisor. But in like the first 6 months of me working for this, district, I never saw my supervisor. Like I saw this person in passing, and Skandle, even though it wasn't even his job, taught me the entire part of the job. But then they complained when I wasn't taught how to do it right. Like, do you remember me ever get training?
I had never done it either. Like I didn't do any of that. I didn't work in the Chromebook service center whenever I worked there. I was the tech. I fixed all the other stuff technology wise in that building. So I didn't have that training either. So
we were out there roughing it.
Yeah. But yeah, that sucks, dude. Yeah.
I'm bitter, but I'm not like I'm not like super upset, but I'm kind of like, come on.
It's a fresh wound.
Yeah.
If we were talking about this a year after this new job you're working, you might still be emotional and upset about it, but you can tell that this is a fresh wound. You know what I mean?
I got it. Yeah, I can feel it. I don't have as angry of a story. I want to tell you guys about an experience that really sums up a lot of the fun things I've dealt with in my career. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago. I hired an individual, and I don't give any names or anything, but let's call him like Kevin or something like that. We'll say his name's Kevin.
Okay.
All right. So I hired this individual. The guy was a little socially awkward, but that doesn't bother me. I usually enjoy socially awkward people. I think they're fun to talk to. They're neat individuals. They're all right. So I hired this individual to work in my deli department. So deli, you deal a lot with food. You do a lot of crazy things. Comes down the line, and we start thinking about promotions and everything, and they decide, hey, your store, it runs well. You're doing great things. We're going to start teaching people how to run their delis out of your deli. We're going to have these classes. We're going to have everybody from everywhere come in, and they're going to learn how to do delis from your deli. And I was like, oh, cool. So before that,
with a pay raise?
No.
Did you get a choice?
Could you have said no?
I could have said no.
Or were you like voluntold?
A little bit of all of that. Like, basically, if you want to promote, you got to make a name for yourself somehow.
I get that.
So, this individual, so he was my closer. So before we could ever get this class started and going, I had a lot of really high up managers come in, and we walked through what we were going to be talking about. And, they had to meet the people that I'm working with. They got to meet those employees. So in comes Kevin. He's working that evening, and I'm up there with my boss, my boss's boss, some regional directors, stuff like that. And the first thing that happens is Kevin walks over there, and they start having a conversation with Kevin. So he goes to get some chickens out of the oven, and they say he didn't tempt those chickens. And I kind of look over, and I'm like,
oh, tempt. I thought you said he didn't tempt those chickens, and I'm like,
no,
tempt. Yeah, I figured it out. But
so when fresh food has to come out of the oven, it has to hit certain.
You have to seduce it.
Yeah. It's got to hit
You gotta
certain
put a little
seduction.
razzle-dazzle into that chicken,
Got to get
you know what I mean?
seduction ranges of between. It's got to be above 165, 185. Just depends upon the item. So they're like, hey, he didn't do that. So I kind of walk over there and I'm like, hey, Kevin, did you tip those chickens? He said, oh yeah, boss, no worries, I did. They didn't see you do it. Could you go ahead and tip another one for me? So he grabs the thermometer off the counter and he puts it in the chicken. Well, they're watching there and said, hey, you have to sanitize those thermometers before you do it. And he said, oh, no problem, I can sanitize it. He takes the thermometer out of the chicken. He rubs it on his apron. Then he blows on it. He goes, and then he sticks it right back in the chicken. And the one lady said, oh my God. And I went, oh! I said, whoa. I was like,
He said,
I was like, whoa. I don't know. Like, you get the chickens out a lot? He's like, all the time, boss. I'm like, oh.
He said, all the time, boss.
I was like, hey, we're gonna get back and train you on this. So I'm gonna pull you off this right now. I'm gonna have the manager come over there. They're gonna take these chickens out. So he kind of walks away, and I take that chicken, I throw it in the trash, and his manager comes over. One of my managers that I control kind of in that area, and I was like, hey, that was not good. I was like, he wasn't using the thermometer right, and I don't even think he was using it at all. So she's like, okay, she apologizes, she gets him out, we throw away the other chicken. So at this point, all of the managers, and I mean, you guys know higher up managers, they become fixated on things, and a lot of times they like to just push points. So we send that individual over there to send them to do dishes. And of course, what do you think all of them did?
If they're sanitizing those dishes,
They walked around to where the dishes were being done because they were intrigued as well. So he's over there and he's doing dishes. And there's a big old sink full of water, and one of them's like,
"There's no soap. There's no sanitizing water."
So listen, here's the thing. Hold on. So the water, he goes over there, he's going. So I walk around, as they're going there, and I kind of walk out. So they don't want to talk to me anymore. They want to ask this employee questions. They're like, hey, what are you doing here? Walk us through this. So he's like, I'm washing the dishes that we have through the day. He said, so, you've got and there's a sign on the wall. It says wash, rinse, sanitize. So he sees that. He's like, you got to wash, then you rinse, and then you sanitize. And last key points, that's where you sanitize. But the sanitizer water is a little dirty. Okay, sanitizer water is a lot dirty. So they're like, well, that sanitizer, you would have to test that to make sure that that's actually good sanitizer. So how would you test that? Without missing a beat, he puts his hand in the water and he swishes it around and it makes bubbles. And he said, those bubbles let you know that there's still sanitizer in it. And at that point,
totally 100% accurate answer.
At that point, I was like, yo, my boss says, this individual, like Kevin, quit playing around. Without missing a beat again, he takes both hands and he makes a big commotion. He said, I said it's good. What are you, stupid? And he does it again. To my boss looks at me and he starts laughing because he's like, I can't believe this. And I said, yo, I was like, hey, Kev, we need to, we're going to take you off here, because we got something going on. I said, we're probably going to put you somewhere else. I was like, hey, how about you go fry up some chicken? And he's like, I do that all the time. No worries.
You put
listen,
in like the freezer.
Listen,
like,
frying chicken is like one of
the
frying chicken is one of the easiest jobs. And to be fair, he didn't mess up frying chicken at all. He did frying chicken exactly correct. Unfortunately, Kevin,
you have to sanitize the chicken.
Kevin is my closer. And every night when you close, you have to filter the fryer oil.
He's never done it.
You have to. Oh, I wish. You have to pull this fryer oil. There's a machine, and it pulls the fryer oil out. Yeah. Well, 2 times a week, you have to completely dump the fryer oil and put new oil in.
Yeah.
So they begin to quiz him on this aspect of his job, and he says, "Yes, I'm very good at that." So at this point, the individual still doesn't really know that he's been doing stuff wrong. He probably feels that he's been asked a lot of questions compared to everyone else, but they're taking this guy Pound Town. So he's like, hey, and they're like, so walk us through that. So he talks about the first way.
Wait, let's take guesses on what we think happens.
Okay.
All right, I've got 100%. I bet this dude takes it over to a storm drain and just unloads that shit into the fucking drain.
Okay,
that's my fucking guess.
So here's my guess. He takes it and puts it in a container and then pours it back into the fryer to use again.
No! Oh my god, that's almost worse.
So,
okay.
He talks about the first part where you filter it, and he nails that. He does that exactly correct. And they're like, oh, good. But then he mentions, yeah, but every once in a while we also have to do a boil out. And I wish he would have never said this, because they said, oh, I know what a boil out is, but that doesn't have anything to do with the fryer. So a boil out is when you dump the water out of the fryer. It's just water. That's all it is. He said, yeah, you do it for the water and you do it for the oil. To which they said, huh, could you explain that process for it? He says, no worries. What I do is I start the process like I'm going to filter it, but I hook the hose up to a really big bucket. I fill that bucket with oil and then I dump it down the drain.
You were right! Holy shit!
And they said that one of them looks at him, they said, hey, don't you know that is a major compliance issue and we could be in major trouble? Without missing a beat, he said, no worries. I get a bucket of hot soapy water and throw it down right after it, and that gets rid of it all. It was at that moment my boss looked at me and my market manager looked at me, and I looked at the individual, Kevin? And I said, yeah, Kevin. I said, hey, we've been thinking about moving you back to dairy, so we're probably going to put you in the dairy department.
You fired?
Yeah, I was like, I would have been like, Kevin, you better go home, bro.
I did not
have no job.
I did not fire him. We did have a long conversation about it back in the office afterwards. And from that point forward, that individual worked in the dairy department instead of where the food was being prepared.
As far away from any oil or sanitizer as possible.
He was such a fun guy. Just would the craziest things would happen to him. One day he was walking across the parking lot, and me and all my managers see him coming out of an Aldi. And we're like, hey, what were you doing in there? He said, because he's still wearing his other work getup. He says, oh, no worries, bosses. And he pats us on the shoulder. He says, I was just in there washing up. Where the hell do you wash up in all these? We still don't know. We don't know. And I wasn't going to ask because I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole. And then one day he came in and, he was fully decked out in his camo that day. And we're like, hey, you going hunting? And he said, yeah, birds. And we're like, oh, birds? Like what? You hunting the most dangerous? The bald eagle? And he looks at us, and he says, you can't hunt bald eagles. That's illegal. Trust me, I would know. And that's all he said and walked away. And he walks off, we looked at each other like, did he kill a bald eagle?
That man is eating every animal.
We're like, did he kill a bald eagle? Like, what? So, that is just one of the wild employees I've had over my time. Whew.
I'm still waiting for you to be like, by the way, Kevin's not real. I made him up.
He no longer works for the same company as me. I can tell you that.
Surprise! Wow, who could have seen this coming? Anyone with eyes, perhaps?
He did not get along with the individual that he had to work with back in the other dairy department, and looked her in the eye one day and said, if you don't shut up, I'm going to kill you. And we said, oh, cannot say that, buddy.
Didn't they call women birds in the 50s?
Maybe. Oh, God. I hope not. I was like, okay. So we had to terminate the employment at that time. Oh, that was one of my favorite incidents.
Have you guys ever said like anything like that to someone before, like in a work setting?
If you don't shut up right now, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, I've said that so many times.
I've said it, but it's the people I know. It's like people I know and I like and I get along with. I would not say that to someone that I'm arguing with. And you just gotta understand the way this guy's whole demeanor was. And when he would get quiet and say things, you could feel how serious he was. And the guy wasn't a very big joker. Like, he didn't joke around a lot. And when he did, it wasn't...
Or he only joked and you just couldn't tell and he never bothered clarifying.
Oh, needless to say, we pushed the training back a week for the deli so we could make sure everything was right before we opened it. Yeah. That's what I got.
Okay. I wish mine was funny. Not. It's another really bad job.
Oh, good. Oreo sandwich. So a little hard on the outside, gooey fun stuff on the middle. A little more hard on the outside.
Do you nut in your Oreos?
Okay. So now this is just my experience, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who did not have the same experience that I had, but I'd like to tell you guys about my Air Force career. Okay? Now, it's only 6 years long, okay? But there's a reason for that. So, first and foremost, nobody in my family that I know of or that I've had contact with has been in the military, right? So, when I finally decided that it was my time to join the military because I was kind of a waste of space and I was a single dad, that kind of stuff. So I decided I was going to join the Air Force. So I go to this place called MEPS, and this is kind of like where you go to pick your job out. It's where you go to the doctor, they check you out, make sure you can actually join the military, that kind of stuff. So I go there, I take my ASVAB test, I score really high, and then the jobs that are offered to me, I put all my jobs down. Combat weather was like my top one. I kind of thought that was interesting. It's not called combat weather anymore, but yeah. Bro, I teach for a living. Get off your phone.
Wow. Listen.
No, I'm sorry. You can cut all that out. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, so I picked a job, and I didn't get it. But the reason I didn't get it is because my recruiter left for the NCO Academy, and they brought in a new staff sergeant to take his place while he was gone. And she called me one day. Now I was waiting like 9 months to get my combat weather job because that's the one I wanted. And they said it's a 9-month hold. You have to wait for enough people to leave that position for you to be able to come into it. So she calls me on the phone and she says, "Hey, I got some good news." And I was like, "Okay, what's up?" She goes, "The situation's kind of weird, but we can get you out in 2 weeks if you want to, and you don't have to wait 9 months." And I was like, "Well, hell yeah, because I'm just a piece of shit here. I might as well do something with my life." So I said, "Let's do it." So we get to basic training. I go through all of basic training. 1 week before we graduate, they kind of give you this paper, and it tells you what your AFSC is or what your job is going to be in the military. So I looked down, and it said the number, and they had all these pictures on the wall of what you were going to be, right? So they said you're going to be services, which 90% of people who are in services are cooks. Okay? Now, not to say there's anything wrong with that, right? But I just felt like it was not beneath me, but that I picked like 6 other jobs. What happened? Well, then I find out that my recruiter had put me down for open general. She had done what's called a quick ship. So you leave in 2 weeks, you forfeit all of your job that you've guessed because you just need to get into basic training. So I went through all that basic training and they had me in open general. And the Air Force just puts you where they need you. Now, I was lucky I didn't get security forces, right? Because that's not what I would have wanted to do. So my first 4 years of my military career, I worked in the kitchen. Now, I learned how to cook, and that was cool and everything, but it was kind of like it was a very thankless job, right? Like, nobody gives a shit about the people who cook your food, right? Like, nobody gives a shit about us. We're not aircraft. We're not crew chiefs. We're not working on aircrafts like mechanics do. We're not ammo. We're not anything cool, right? Like, we do what you need, right? So it's a very thankless job, and most places don't really take us seriously. They kind of shit on us the whole time. That was really shitty to get put into that. Now, I met some good people in services, and I really enjoyed a lot of the people I worked with, but once our initial leadership left, we got new leadership, and they didn't give a shit about anybody except for them getting out of that base, because I was at a base that was considered a black hole. So once you were in this base, it was very difficult to get out. So luckily, though, I made it through 4 years, and then the last 2 years I got to work in the gym. So I was like we were personal trainers back then. We had to teach classes, and we were Cooper certified. And, so that was fun, and that's how I kind of ended my career. But like, I guess that's my shitty story for the Air Force, is how I got put into the job that I was in the military, because I don't know. It's a very, like, when people are like, "Hey, thank you for your service. What'd you do in the Air Force?" Like, I don't want to tell them. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because that's how little you get made to feel in that position in the Air Force. So yeah. So like, I just tell people, like, I was a personal trainer in the Air Force, because I did that my last 2 years, because my first 4 years was I don't know, man. It's just not, when you ask somebody what they do in the military and they come at you and they're like, "I was a cook," you're kind of like, oh. Because most people, when you ask them what they did in the Air Force, they just assume you're a pilot.
Yeah. There's only like 4 jobs, right? Pilot, engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the
plane. Yeah.
No,
I want to be an airplane.
You start your training, you get on the runway, you're like, that's like the rat. She gave you the razzle dazzle. That sucks.
Yeah,
no, she straight up bamboozled.
She straight up fucked me, man. Like, that's all that was. Like, and that pretty much did set the precedence for how my military career was going to be. Just bend over and take it in the ass without any lube. That's your military career.
Yeah. Man, that kind of well. So,
we should have ended on your happy note.
Yeah, this has been such a shit show.
This is the NerdLore podcast.
This is the NerdLore podcast.
Thanks for letting us reminisce about our shit livelihoods.
Don't forget to like and comment and subscribe. So, like, comment, and cry. So, you know, this has been kind of our stories of things we've dealt with in the multiple careers that we've had. What kind of stuff happens to you guys at your job? What kind of things that do you think you would want to hear more about? That's a big one for me. I know that we also have a little bit more to give you when we sign out. So I want to talk about, instead of video games this week or games you should be playing, I want to talk about a movie you should watch.
Mortal Kombat.
Well, that's not out yet, but we'll talk about it.
I know, it comes out next month.
Yeah. So, Digimon Adventure Last Evolution Kazuma. Don't. If I see you guys roll your eyes, you know that hurts me too, right? Okay, well, fine. Listen.
Please do your thing. I'm sorry.
Listen.
I'm just reminiscing about our Digimon podcast that we did back in the day.
I
you
love
go ahead,
Digimon.
man. You keep.
We did a Digimon one?
Yeah.
Wait.
Not like a full one, but he did one on Digimon.
Yeah.
Things we were excited about, I think.
Yeah. This is what I was excited about. It's here.
So the movie's out.
Yeah.
Hey.
So the movie's here. You should watch it.
We did one on Digimon.
Yeah, we did. Well, that was a solo. That was me and another buddy, I think, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So
I watch all your solos.
The movie came out. I finally got it. Let me tell you this. First of all, it is the true ending to the Digimon show, like the old one. They've rebooted it now, but this is the end. They said, hey, we've got to end this before we start a reboot out. And let me tell you this too. I am a grown man. I am a grown giant man.
I can't wait to take that out.
I am
Let
a
me tell you
grown
something. I am a grown man.
I am a grown man.
That's it.
And towards the end of this movie, I was getting a little misty-eyed. I was a little sad with what was going on. I was like, dang, why you gotta do me like this, Digimon? So, if you guys like Digimon, if you watched it, the final movie is out. It's on DVD and Blu-ray. Pick it up.
Go get it, baby.
Go get it. Skandle? Do you want to tell them about music, or do you got something for them?
Yeah, I guess so. I want to talk about Led Zeppelin. Great band, but I am going to do a solo, or unless somebody wants to join in on it, about a theory about them stealing all of their stuff, everything. So, yeah. So I'm going to like even Stairway to Heaven, stolen. So I will. Yeah. So that's interesting, right? So maybe I'll do that podcast whenever I get some time to do that.
Be on the lookout for that.
Yeah. So, and I did want to say, just real quick, thank you all for the support. We've seen those numbers rise incredibly. We love it. It's cool to like we do this because it's fun for us, right? But it is really, really cool to see the amount of support that we've had, and please give us some comments, give us some things to talk about, because sometimes we run out of ideas.
I never run out of ideas. What do you mean?
And
Crash, what you got?
I was going to say, our current schedule looks like this. We've got a solo coming out from Shiny, but that should be next week. We've got a solo project coming out from me the following week. And then after that, I have to look at this schedule because I didn't think, I have to, actually tell them about this. So why pull it up in the first place, right? Then it is convention concert stories on the next one, and then college stories. God. Look forward to all of those coming up in the next month. As always, you can check us out on Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, and the other ones.
all the other ones. Hey, but do us a favor, like hit the like button, hit the follow button. That's that's what I'd like to see.
Hit like button. That's
hit
good.
like button, make me feel good.
Like a button of good.
This whole podcast was such a shit show.
Goodbye, everybody. Have a wonderful night.
This is the NerdLore podcast signing out.